One of the questions that I have specifically was the beginning of the airport, because when we're searching through all the website and stuff, it always came up to the 1930s and maybe a picture before that, but we don't really have an idea of what the airport was like.
The airport at that point was where Northwest Schools is today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so where there's baseball fields there and the school is there. I really don't know how much was there. I think there was a building or two there and some airplanes, but I don't really know the extent of it. In the mid 50s, early to mid 50s, the airport moved from that site to this site. And it was owned by the city of Howell at that time. And they moved it out here to get it further away from town. And in 1963, the county bought the airport from the city. And in this site, at that point in time, it was a north-south and an east-west grass runway. And the county set about paving a 3,000-foot runway parallel to Grand River, which is the same alignment we have today, runway 1331. So in 1963, the airport paved the first 3,000 feet. No parallel taxiway at that time, except on the east end, and the ramp over by the old terminal building on Grand River. A portion of that was put in. Terminal building came in 1967 or 1968. That was built by a matching grant from local dollars that were donated by businesses, and the other 50% was state funding. There were several terminal buildings around the state that looked exactly like that one. It was a set of plans the state had, and if you wanted a terminal building, this is what we built. So that was 1966, 67, 68, somewhere in there. Fuel pumps were put in shortly thereafter. Spence Hardy, who the airport is named after, was very instrumental in building that terminal building. He had been doing flight instruction, got out of the trunk of his car because there wasn't a building to be in. So he was the spearhead for getting those funds donated. He then operated his business out of that building. He put in a fuel farm so he could fuel the airplanes. He had flight instruction rental, and he did some charter. And he was also instrumental shortly after the first of the T hangars along Grand River was built. Those were built in the early 70s, those 3 rows of hangars. And he ran his business out of that until 1984, when the county essentially bought him out. They bought the fuel farm, and he was retiring at that time anyway. So the county took over the fueling operation at that time. In the late 80s, there was demand from the business community for a longer runway. They were seeing some airplanes that needed a little more length on the runway, so they built the runway from 3,000 feet to 4,300 feet. I believe that was a 1989 project. And that lengthened the runway. The county also built 100 T hangars at that as a part of a multi-year project at that time. Full-length taxiway was built, and the runway was extended and repaved in the late 80s. We're sitting in the new terminal building on the north side of the airport we'll be in it 3 years at the end of this month. And that was one of the last of the projects after the new runway and the taxiway realignments came along. And we've referred to it as kind of the icing on the cake. From the pilot's perspective, we had everything we needed runway-wise, but from the passenger perspective, the old terminal was getting to be a little tired, and it was a little small, and some days a little bit cramped. So we designed this new building. We'd gone on a field trip to look at some other airports across the state and terminal buildings that we'd heard good things about, and we'd seen a couple of them in the past. Talked with those people about what they liked, what they didn't like about their building, and tried to do everything right the first time with building ours. And we've had a lot of positive feedback, both from our customers and from members of the community, about this being a great improvement over the old building.